Fullerton has done it. They've gone from 15 and 16 to champions of college baseball.
Welcome to the 1,544 Miles to Omaha podcast, talking about the past, present, and future of Cal State Fullerton baseball.
The pitch. He's swinging. There's a hot rod to right field. He has done it. Scott Hurst has hit his 4th home run of the game. Wow! What else can he do? Oh, my goodness.
That's going to get a run home. Andrews will score easily. Pill is on his way to third without a throw.
And Cal State Fullerton wins it.
Here's your host, Dave Lamb.
Welcome into our second Twitter space, recapping the weekend series that really wasn't a series. It was just a doubleheader, unfortunately, due to the weather. That unfortunately the Titans dropped 2 games to the Michigan Wolverines this past weekend, and they only played on Sunday because the Friday game was moved to Monday and eventually canceled, and then the Saturday game was moved to Sunday as a doubleheader. So, give me your thoughts, Mike, on the doubleheader with Michigan coming in this past weekend.
I mean, it's disappointing because I really enjoyed watching them compete against Stanford, and I thought, let's bring in Michigan. They're unranked. I know they had a rough time at Michigan last year, but they're at home, and to get swept in a doubleheader at home, that was rough.
So, what was your assessment as to what went wrong? I mean, obviously there was 7 runs and then 9 runs in both games scored by Michigan. Obviously, the ERA is at about a 7.5. Well, it's like I think it's 7.34 or something like that for the season, including the Stanford series. But what was it just the pitching? Was it just not timely hitting?
I mean, looking at the stats and everything, it was definitely the starting pitching, in my opinion. I mean, you got to give some quality starts, and you got to put up zeros, and you got to stay away from big innings, and we weren't able to do that. And looking at Stoltz, I mean, what's killing him early on is his walks. I mean, he's given up 9 walks in 11 innings, and that's not going to cut it. Pitching at Division I baseball, and Hinkle's the opposite. He's not really walking anybody, but he's giving up too many hits. That means he's not missing barrels, and he's going to have to locate better, or change speeds better, or make a few adjustments.
Yeah, I found it interesting in the fact that the good news, bad news is that Hinkle, who gave up 3 home runs against Stanford, gave up no home runs, but unfortunately Tyler Stoltz has given up another home run. Unfortunately, that one was a 3-run bomb in that first game. So now he's got 2 home runs hung on him for the past 2 games, or the past 2 starts. And looking back at what he did last year, he only had 4 home runs given up all year, and he had 14 or 15 starts. So, I don't know. I mean, it's still a very small sample size when it comes to. It's a very, very small sample size when it comes to just 2 games, and is he going to be on pace to give up a home run every single start? Probably not, but it's one of those things. It's like, man, if just and not to rehash the Stanford series, but if they could just keep the ball in the yard, we'd be looking at whole different outlook on the whole past 2 weeks.
Right. I know. I agree. Are these college hitters having more of a launch angle now on their swings? I mean, they're lifting balls more. I don't know. Are pitchers, leaving balls up too much, or are pitching low and they're getting under it? I don't know what's going on.
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of do this as a weekly thing with you is because obviously you played the game, and you played the game at a high level. In your experience, especially just your 3 years at Cal State Fullerton, I know it was a number of years ago, but was it your experience that the hitters were always a little bit more ahead of the pitchers, and it took a little bit more time to kind of settle in? then, that's the reason why the ERAs are usually up early in the season and then things kind of even out? Or was that your experience when you're playing college ball?
No, not at all. I mean, we expected to be ready to go from the beginning. That's why you had such a long fall, and you really grinded out January. When you got into that Stanford series, you're ready. You're ready to throw a complete game. You're ready to throw 7-8 innings. There's no excuses. So, I don't know if things have changed in fall or what's been limited or practice times or whatever, but we couldn't wait to play somebody else, and we were ready to go from the beginning. That's how I felt. We definitely had a lot more talent, but these pitchers are throwing harder than I did. So I don't know. I don't want to. There's no excuses to be made at this point right now. They got to find a way to get done, and they got to get better. And I know the coaches expect them to get better.
Well, going into Michigan, a lot of us were expecting, hopefully, okay, yeah, we get it. Stanford is number 2, number 3 in the nation, depending on the poll you look at. So, stealing one, if you want to call it stealing one, or just taking one of 3 was kind of that moral victory and not getting swept. And then obviously coming off the emotional Tulane midweek, that the optimism was pretty high, especially with Michigan coming in. The pitching wasn't supposed to be all that great just because since Eric Bakich left, went to Clemson, a lot of dudes jumped in the transfer portal and followed him over to Clemson. So, from what we were reading and hearing, it seemed like Michigan was going to be a little bit down based on, I know that Michigan had been in the College World Series finals, just a few years ago, but that obviously is a few years ago and those dudes have moved on. But I can speak for myself. Personally, I was looking forward to really, really taking it to Michigan and having one of those get-right weekends. Unfortunately, the weather played a part as well. But, not to be all doom and gloom here, but, it's a little bit disappointing in the fact that, hopefully being able to catch Michigan at a good time ended up being a doubleheader sweep and then couldn't even try to salvage a win coming out of the Monday game that got rescheduled.
I was hoping to see Yates get a second start and them come out with a solid outing and get the victory before moving on. But this weather's been brutal for everybody, and when it comes to the good, bad, and ugly, to me the ugly is the weather that we've been dealing with in SoCal, and it's been a rough place to play baseball, and maybe it's affected the Southern California kids more.
Yeah, maybe in taking a look at the weather forecast, and not even just the weather, just the past weather that we were experiencing in Southern California, it was relatively about the same as what we could have expected in Ann Arbor, except it was wet and rainy, whereas it was just straight up cold in Ann Arbor.
Right.
But it was cold and windy and rainy on top of it, and the field conditions didn't bode well as well. So that kind of made it a little bit treacherous. And then I guess one of the good ones is, and I wrote this in the column that came out earlier today on CalStateOmaha.com, was that I guess it might be a blessing in disguise in that the third game got canceled. And then the USC game got canceled because that gives an opportunity for the field, which we need to be in really, really good shape for Texas coming in. And it gives an opportunity for that to heal up and, get a lot of the water out of there. And hopefully they'll be cutting that grass because I'm sure all that rain has made that outfield grass and the infield grass, grow like crazy. But then at the same time, you've got, maybe some bumps and bruises that came out of it, especially to JoJo Ingracia. I haven't heard exactly what has happened with him, if it's a really, really serious injury to the point where it's a broken leg, or if it's just a really, really big knot on his shin or his knee or whatever body part the ball bounced off of. But maybe if it's not terribly serious, maybe that weekend of not having to use him will do better because then he'll be available in Texas. But we haven't heard anything official come out, whether it's a season-ending injury because it's a broken leg, or if it's just, hey, it's a deep contusion and he needed some extra rest.
Well, I hope he's fine because they're going to need him. And one guy who didn't pitch, which I was looking forward to see pitch in Michigan, was Finn Chester. He didn't get a throw, and I'm sure he was up to pitch on Sunday, or not Sunday, but on that Monday. So I'm sure he'll be used once or twice this weekend against Texas. And I'm looking forward to that series. This is good. This is probably the first time Texas ever come down to Fullerton, if I'm right. I always felt we went out to Texas 2 or 3 times when I played. It never came our way.
Well, the last time the Titans played Texas was a 3-game series in 2020, and that was actually the last set of baseball games that the Titans played before the whole COVID-19 shutdown occurred. And they were actually supposed to host, I believe it was Xavier, in a midweek series. I think it was either a 1 or a 2-game midweek series following their trip out to Austin. And then a lot of if you remember back, it's been almost 3 years now that, the NBA players are coming down with COVID, and then, things are kind of getting shut down, and they're doing this whole, we don't really know how to act on this thing, and then everything just got shut down, and then we all know, the rest is history when it came to that. But the last series that the Titans played was in Austin at Dish Falk Field against the Longhorns. So this is
Has Texas ever come to Fullerton? Is this the first time Texas has ever come to Fullerton?
I'd have to look up on the media guide, and so
I would say this is the first time would be my guess, because I don't think they've ever come down unless they came down late, in the 70s or 80s. But this has to be the first time, which is exciting because they bring a great fan, and they're going to have a great tailgaters, and I think they've been struggling a little bit early, haven't they?
Yeah, they actually have. I believe they're 3-5. So, also wrote this in the preview, or at the end of the column that I wrote today on Thursday Thoughts on CalStateOmaha.com, was talking about their series and who of their offense, who of their defense, pitchers and all that are going to be formidable. Their Friday night guy, I think, is pretty lights out. I think he's got less than a 1. I think it's, if off the top of my head, it's a .84. It's a 0.84 ERA for the Friday guy. So definitely, if the Titans can touch him up early and get him out of the game, that's going to bode well. Their Saturday guy is a little shaky. Hasn't done all that well, I believe, in taking a look. And I was hoping to get somebody from Occupy Left Field, which is kind of the equivalent of us, but for Texas's fan base. I was hoping to get them on to be able to do a little preview for that. But in taking a look at their Saturday guy, Zane Morehouse, he's had about a total of 9 innings over the course of 2 games, and he's got a 4.0 ERA. So opponents are batting .273 against him. So not too bad. And then I don't even want to attempt their Sunday guy's name. It's Travis, and then it's spelled Sthele. I want to say I don't even want to make the attempt at it. But he's had a little bit of a better ERA. He's at 3.12, and then opponents are batting .263 against him. So. But yeah, Lucas Gordon.
So they got pretty good, decent starters on paper, for sure.
Well, the Lucas Gordon, he's a kid out of Southern California. He went to Notre Dame High School up there in L.A.
That's the Notre Dame. Yeah, I know all about him. Is he? What day does he pitch?
He's probably scheduled. Well, the past 2 series, or the past 2 weekends, he's started on Friday. So he's going to come out and start on Friday. I'm assuming, but yeah, the ERA for him is pretty low. I want to say it's he's just allowed 1 run in 10.2 innings. So 10 2/3 innings, he's allowed just 1 run, walked 4, struck out 13, hasn't given up a home run, and then batters are batting .176 against this guy. So Fullerton batters,
he's
you
a
guys.
solid lefty. He's a solid lefty. They bring on those right-handed hitters from Fullerton.
Yeah, no kidding, right? So I'm scrolling down here looking at the media guide and taking a look to see what Texas has done. And it's been, gosh, I want to say they've played Texas a number of times. but in '83. So I mean, we're talking way back in '83.
Right.
So the last three was in Austin, so those were away, and then in '04, which obviously we know is the national championship year when George Horton took on Augie. That was in Omaha.
Yes, and I was at the 3-game series in '04 at Texas when Texas swept Fullerton that year, and that's when Fullerton was the last time they were under 500. I was there all weekend. I remember that series.
And then let's see here. So '04, they played away, and then in '03 they played Texas, and it says at home. So in '03, so we've got to go back 20 years. And then in '95 they had a home game against Texas.
Oh wow!
And then let's see here. But other than that, no, I haven't seen any kind of a 3-game series. So dating all the way back, first meeting ever was in '83, and that was away. And then in '84, we know that they met them in the College World Series on a neutral. And then it was away in '85, away in '86. And then
I was on the '94 team that swept them at Texas. That could have been one of the first times they've ever been swept at home, and that was in '94.
Yeah, '94. They were ranked number 9 at the time, and it was a 5-0, 11-6, and an 18-4. So looks like the Titans brought their bats back in 1994. But this is going to be the first home series that all 3 games are going to be played at Goodwin Field, which is kind of crazy. That's they've played each other. I'm just looking at it. I mean, probably 18, 20 times, including a number of times in the College World Series, and they've never played a 3-game series out here in California. So this is the return trip, because if the pandemic didn't shut everything down and then everything was limited because of 2021 and all that other kind of stuff, that Texas was actually owed the Titans a trip back to California, because it was one of those home and aways, and David Pierce and I guess Hook had agreed to do this. Okay, hey, we'll go to Texas first, and then you guys come out to Fullerton. And then in 2021, everything got blown up, and then Dietrich comes in 22, and then a lot of those scheduling things that were done between 2 coaches, if one isn't there, they might say, hey, we're good, we don't, blah, blah, blah. So I guess, hats off to Coach Dietrich for coming up and trying to get Texas to come back and give us that return trip, because I think a lot of people are excited, whether you're a Fullerton fan or not. Everyone's excited to see this series in college baseball. So I've been hearing a lot of people talk about it, whether you're from UCLA, SC, whatever. So it's pretty great that they're coming into town and we're hosting. Yeah, and it's definitely college blue bloods for sure. I mean, obviously 18 trips and 4 national championships for the Titans. Texas, I don't know off the top of my head, but they've been in the College World Series.
They have a lot.
Tons. So this is definitely some baseball royalty facing off this weekend. But before we get too much into the looking forward to the Texas series, any other thoughts coming out of the weekend? I know it's a short sample size because we just had only 2 games to be able to sample from. But any more thoughts on the Michigan series?
Like I said before, it was disappointing. Starting pitching wasn't quite there. Weather was brutal. We have a few bats that are struggling. We have some bats that are doing great. I didn't pay too close attention to how our defense was in the Michigan series. I know we had one kid who started 1 game and went 4 for 5 in White. So I'm sure he'll get a start somewhere in this Texas series, I'd imagine. And, you just got to keep moving forward. You got to keep plugging away. And if you're a Titan baseball player, and I'm sure Dietz has brought up a lot of the history between Fullerton and Texas, you got to be excited to play. And I think you're going to have some good crowds, and I know you're going to have some great weather.
Yeah, the weather should be nice, and it's not going to be too hot. I think it's going to be, mid-60s and dry, thankfully. So that's going to be nice, and the fact that we're all going to dry out and we don't have to wear overcoats or gloves and hats and all that kind of stuff, which we have been doing for the past couple of weeks. I wanted to get your thoughts. Did you get a chance to see in the second game the Nate Nankill trying to go from second all the way home, and he ended up getting thrown out at home. And I mean, I know it's kind of rare to be able to
Right.
successfully come from second base on a pass ball and then
Right.
score. Did you get a chance to see that on the ESPN Plus replay or be able to watch it live?
I did not. I want you to explain to me that situation because I didn't hear about that. But how many outs were there? What inning? And what was the score when he tried to take 2 bases on a wild pitch or pass ball? That ball must have really got away from the catcher to the right or left for him to even think about it. And was Belo sending him, or was this on his own?
So I was there live, and I ended up having to go back on and watch the replay on ESPN Plus. I wasn't able to tell if Belo sent him or if he just went on his own or whatever it was. But the situation which you've asked for was, it was the bottom of the 5th inning. Nate Nankill had, I believe he walked, and then Caden Connor got on base either with a single or a walk. Nankill, I believe, walked. Zach Liu comes up, no outs, 2 men on, hits a rocket shot to third base, who only had to field it and maybe take a step or two to step on third and get the force. And then he wings it all the way across to first base for the double play. So he gets Caden Connor, the lead runner, on third, and then Zach Liu for the double play, which leaves Nate Nankill at second base with 2 outs. And they were trailing at this time. I can go back. I believe they were, but I don't believe they were trailing by a ton. I think they were maybe trailing by 2 runs. So it was more than 1 run. I know that, but I know that they were trailing, I believe, by 2 runs. And what happened was the starter, Chase Allen, who was cruising, Colby Wallace comes up to the plate, and the first pitch to Wallace was wild, and the catcher for Michigan struggled to locate the ball, and he was really he wasn't getting any help from his teammates either, in the fact that they didn't say, like, hey, it's at your feet or it's dribbled over here, and he was really struggling to find it. And by that time, he goes, and I think it dribbled over to, and I wasn't able to discern exactly how far away it was from home plate on the replay, but I believe it dribbled over pretty kind of far away over towards the on deck circle for where the Titans on deck circle on third base side. And he picks up the ball. Obviously the pitcher covers home, lobs the ball to the pitcher, and then the pitcher tags Nate Nankill, who's doing a face-first slide, and easily gets him on the arm, and umpire was right there. I mean, it was a really easy call. I saw it happen live, and I was like, what are we doing? You know, we're running. Why are we trying to advance and try to get it? So in watching the replay, I was looking to see, like, okay, well, did the coach send him? Or did the coach try to stop him and he just blew through the sign, or what, what happened? And I'm not trying to point fingers or lay blame here. I was just trying to figure out what happened. And in looking at the replay, Belo took a couple steps back. So normally where the coach's box is in front of the bag a little bit. Well, he actually took a step back, and you could see him saying something to Nankill, and I couldn't tell. I'm not that great of a lip reader, and the camera was moving pretty fast, but I couldn't tell if he was saying no, 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 or go, go, go.
Go.
Right? It was really hard to tell, obviously, with that. And I don't even know if he was saying no or go. I can't even tell from there. But he was saying something to the point where, but he didn't have his hands up with the stop sign. He wasn't, cranking the arm like the windmill and sending him. It was just a verbal. So
it sounds like, from what you've described, in my opinion, is usually third base coaches don't use a no go because it's too similar. I think it's either a different type of verbiage, so you're not confused. Second of all, it's not like a base hit to the outfield where the coach is going to use his best judgment on setting them or sustaining them, knowing the outs, knowing who's on deck. Obviously you're in the middle of the order there. I think it was just a hustle play, and he thought he could make it. He wanted to get his team fired up, and it sounded like a bad decision on his part. Obviously, we don't make the last out of third or at home, really, and it was a hustle play. If it worked, I'm sure the Titans would have been fired up on that, and unfortunately, it didn't go their way, and, that didn't cost them the game, so, but it probably looked bad.
Yeah, it was just frustrating in the fact of, you get Caden Connor and Nate Nankill on first and second, and nobody out, and then you ground right into kind of a, and Michigan, hats off to them in the fact that they made a good play. Third baseman made a solid, made a heads up move in the fact that he was able to get the lead runner by stepping on third and then making a really nice throw all the way across the diamond to first to get Zach Lou. So, it's not without, giving some kudos and some respect for a pretty solid baseball play at the same time. But, just frustrated in the fact that you had first and second man in scoring position.
And he didn't score. You couldn't put runs on the board.
Yeah, you had first and second, no outs. And nothing.
And you look at the time I played, I would say, unless it was Phil Nevin or Mark Kotze, we're probably sacking those guys over to second and third. But Zach Lou is a veteran. He's your 3-hole hitter. He's a very confident hitter. I could see why you let him swing as well, and obviously it hit a laser or whatever to third baseman. So you can always second guess, but it's tough to make your 3-hitter sack bunt unless it's for the winning a game in the late innings or something.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to also hit on that I thought was pretty good was that last week after the Stanford series, JT Naviak, who is the shortstop for the Titans, he had a little bit of a rough series, didn't bat well, and actually committed 2 errors and had some pretty poor fielding choices out there. But I thought one of the good things is that I thought JT bounced back against Michigan. And yes, small sample size, only 2 games. But one, Dietz and the coaching staff had some faith in him to be able to put him back in the lineup and start both games at shortstop, which we all know is an extremely important position. But at the same time, didn't have a spectacular day, but didn't commit an error. Hit 250 for the day, scored 2 runs, walked once. So I just wanted to say, and I mean, you're a Ken Ravizza disciple. Ken Ravizza was always like, hey, you just got to flush it and you got to move on. So I was impressed with the fact that JT hopefully was using those mental techniques of like, hey, we're just going to flush it, we're going to move on, we're not going to let it get into our head and affect our play for the next series. And although he didn't come out and he didn't light the world on fire, he had a solid couple of games, and hopefully moving forward, that's going to kind of carry the water for that guy. So he's easy to root for, and you always want everybody to do well, but especially a guy that struggles in that opening series.
No one wants to go on and take a field where you're walking on eggshells. That's like the worst thing for a player, right? If I have a bad start, I may not get another start again. If I have a bad series, I'm going to be replaced. Like you like the feeling where, hey, I know I'm the guy. I need about a quarter of the season, maybe half the season if they're going to pull me. And then I've had every opportunity. I know in '94 we had a freshman shortstop, and he was the shortstop no matter what. He could have batted 110, and he was our shortstop. That was Jack Jones, and he batted 9th. He had some big hits here and there, but he didn't hit very well. But he was solid defensively, and that's all I asked for him. And so if JT could just continue being a leader and get guys over and play solid defense, and it's not like they got this big freshman All-American guy behind them waiting for an opportunity or some high draft pick behind him. So, this is his job to lose. I think he's going to get plenty of opportunities. I know the coaching staff wants to see him succeed. I know his teammates want to see him succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was just nice to see him have a solid weekend. and hopefully that's going to carry over to Texas. So
Right.
before we move into the, talking a little bit more about Texas, I know we kind of hit on it a little bit more earlier, but any other thoughts coming out of that Michigan doubleheader / mini series that wasn't really a full series?
It's over with. If I'm Stoltz and Hinkle, I'm not happy with my outings, but I'm excited to throw against Texas. I'm excited to have a quality start, and so that's how you have to look at it. You got to keep working hard. You got to throw a good bullpen. You got to listen to Dietz on how you can improve or what you did wrong, and you got to make those adjustments. So bring on start 3, and you're playing against a great program with a lot of great tradition, and I'm sure they have a lot of great players in that lineup. And let's get out of there feeling good about yourself going into your 4th start. The schedule's going to get a little easier after we get through Texas, I think.
Right. And the good, I guess with the way college baseball is, and obviously with the way the Big West is set up, you've got 2 more series, 2 more weekend series, and a couple of midweeks to get prepared for conference play. And the Titans open up conference play in a couple weeks against UC Irvine, and they've got Texas this weekend. I believe it's Utah on the Tuesday. And then following that, not try to get too far ahead and start looking too far down the calendar. But then we got Pepperdine.
Yeah, it's at Pepperdine.
At Pepperdine, which is going to be the first road trip. But, a road trip up to Malibu isn't really a road trip. It's kind of a bus trip.
Yeah.
And
it's a great place to pitch from my experience. So these pitchers might be a little happy going back there.
Yeah, and so you've got Texas. You've got a midweek against Utah. You've got Pepperdine, and then the following weekend after that, it's conference time. And so you really, really need to have your ducks in a line. You got to have your pitching in order. You got to be ready, because obviously, especially with the way college baseball has been, and even though they've expanded the field to 64 in the super regional era and all that you're guaranteed a spot in the playoffs in the tournament if you win the conference.
Right.
So, and hopefully Coach Dietrich is using these non-conference games as a way to say, hey, you know what, we faced some stiff competition. We're going to be ready to roll once we hit conference. And I know that's at least 2 weeks, if not 3 weeks away. But hopefully this Texas series will be a big confidence builder. And also, talking about Texas, they've been struggling a little bit as a team. Right. we kind of hit on some of the guys that are doing well for, obviously their Friday night guy who's a Southern California guy, but at the same time, as a team, I want to say they are not quite up to the Texas snuff that you want, in the fact that they've got as a team, they're batting .214 batting average.
Right. It's not Texas-like.
Yeah, their team ERA is 3.15, which is 25th in the nation, so not terrible, but not stellar.
Right.
The batting average ranks number 260 in the nation, and then they've got a .959 fielding percentage, which ranks number 205. So they're definitely probably feeling the pressure, because unfortunately they got swept in their opening series, which was one of those tournaments. It was out there at Globe Life Stadium out there in Arlington.
Right.
And they lost to, and I wrote this in my column earlier today, that they kind of got a taste of what it's going to be like to be in the SEC, because they played three SEC teams that first tournament. They played Arkansas, they played Missouri, and they played Vanderbilt, and they lost all 3 of them.
Yeah, those are 2 pretty good programs. So.
Yeah. and then they came back and they got a midweek against Texas A&M Corpus Christi, as you might imagine.
Right.
And then they won another one. They won 2 more Friday and Saturday against Indiana, but then they dropped the rubber match game, the 3rd game, on Sunday to Indiana, and then they just this past, I want to say it was yesterday, they played LSU in Austin, and they lost 3-0. So they're kind of reeling. I think their overall record right now is 3-5.
Right, with pretty good schedule. So I mean, if I'm being honest and I'm the fan looking in, if we could take one against Texas, that's okay. If we get 2 out of 3, what a great series moving forward. And if you get swept, you're biting your fingernails a little bit. So I mean, no one likes to get swept, but we got to go out there wanting to win the series, and that'd be pretty awesome. So that's the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, will we be able to see you out there this weekend, Mike?
I am shooting for it. My high school team, actually, Little South Hills High School, give them a little shout out. We upset Huntington Beach High School last night at J. Sarah. That was a pretty big win for our little program in the freezing cold. And we have a game Saturday. I got to figure out some daughter volleyball stuff, but I'm planning on being out there one of those games for sure. I'd like to see that Friday game for sure.
Well, let's kind of keep it in the Titan family and say a nice shout out to Brett Kay, Titan alumnus, who's the head coach over there at J. Sarah. Super good dude. The fact that he's been able to open up, because they've got that all-turf field.
That field's amazing, and their programs, they're ranked 2 in the nation right now. They have so much talent on that team, and Huntington Beach had like 13 commits. So it was fun to be out there. We had about 30, 40 scouts. I felt like I was at a big-time college game watching 2 high school kids go at it. It was 2 high school programs go at it, so it was pretty fun.
Well, I like the fact that Brett was – obviously, his field is really, really nice. It's been unaffected by the weather and the rainy and the wet conditions. But opening up the field and allowing other teams that's not just him to play on it, that shows kind of the character that Brett Kay, a former Titan, was showing.
Yeah,
so super cool.
Absolutely. You see that kind of guy, and he has a special program, and he has a beautiful field, and I can see why people want to play there.
Right on. Well, hey, at this time, I know we're about 30 minutes in or so, but at this time, I know we've got a few live listeners. I don't know if anybody has a question for us. If you guys want to raise your hand, I think on Twitter Spaces we've got an opportunity that you can go in and you can kind of request to speak or something like that. We just have to be able to notify, or you have to know if you want to say something. You kind of raise your hand or however it is. So
right.
If any of our listeners that are on want to ask a question or make a statement or something like that, we're going to try to keep it very democratic and open so that people can ask a question. But I don't see anybody saying anything, so I guess we'll just we'll close it down from there.
Yeah, we'll continue to do this every week, and we're definitely pulling for the Titans. And I saw you at that Stanford game. I mean, you're definitely one of the biggest diehard fans, and I am turning into a huge fan because I'm a big Dietrich supporter, and he's been very kind to me and my kids in coming to the games or being there early and stuff. So I want to show as much support as possible. I want to get to continue to know these players. I want to see them have a lot of success, and I just know I was able to start against Texas in '93 and in '94, both at Texas. And yes, you have the nerves. You're playing against a big program and a big crowd and a lot of history, but it feels really, really good when you do well. And talking about building your confidence, have a good game against Texas, and your confidence is going to go through the roof moving forward.
Obviously, we want the sweep, but we'll take whatever we can get out of this one because this is a monster matchup, and so whoever comes out of this one is definitely going to get some national attention, no matter if it's a College World Series participant from last year is stumbled out of the gate, but they really came out strong and look what they did to Fullerton, or hey, look what Fullerton did to Texas, and maybe we can give them a little bit more consideration. So we'll definitely see. This is definitely a rubber hits the road type of a series this weekend.
Absolutely, go Titans!
All right, Mike, we'll do this again next week. Thanks for joining us, and thanks everybody for listening. We'll put this out on the 1544 Miles to Omaha podcast as well. But we'll see you at the ballpark. We'll see you at Goodwin Field this weekend.
Thanks for listening to the 1544 Miles to Omaha podcast. Feel free to visit our website, CalStateOmaha.com. While there, you can order an official Cal State Omaha t-shirt from the merch store. Please subscribe to the 1544 Miles to Omaha podcast and share with family and friends. It's easy. It takes just a few seconds. The 1544 Miles to Omaha podcast is an On the Lam Enterprises production and is not affiliated with Cal State Fullerton or Titan Baseball.